Hello, everyone. Welcome to Board Game Design Time. On this episode, we're going to talk about randomness in board games and the ways that you can use it in your designs to create really cool moments for your players. My name is Chris, and I'm here, as always, with my co host, Matt. Say hello, Matt.
Hello, everybody.
Now, Matt, I want you to give our viewers some examples of what we mean when we talk about randomness within games.
Randomness within games. That could be anything from rolling a die, rolling multiple dice, or drawing a card from a random deck, or even pulling chits out of a bag that you can't see through. A lot of random factors in board games.
Yeah, and you see them in tons of games. Most games have some element of randomness in them. And why is that, Matt? Why is randomness so important to include?
Well, one of the reasons why I like randomness a lot in games is that it can kind of mitigate skill levels. So one person who's never played this game before can actually kind of have a chance by getting that lucky draw against the person who's been playing this game for years. Um, Not like chess, where, if your skill level is way higher than your opponent's, you're almost going to win every time. That's why I think randomness in games is not only somewhat important, but it can be really fun too. It could also create some crazy outcomes that could be very memorable.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be definitely some players who are more into completely skill driven games because it doesn't feel good when your choices in a game don't actually matter. If we designed a game and it was we both take turns rolling a d6 and the first person to roll a 6 wins, that's not a very fun game. You want to be able to influence the outcome. However, some games like Magic the Gathering have been popular in part because of the fact that a new player can sit across from the best Magic player in the world and have a snowball's chance in hell of, which I guess is a bad example because that has a very, anyways, have a slim chance in hell of actually competing with that pro level player. Um, I think that something to consider is the fact that you're going to have players of different skill levels playing your games. And in order to sort of help that and facilitate that along, you want to include elements for them to sort of get those advantages, even if it's, by random circumstance.
Yeah.
The other side of that is you don't want to go too far in the other direction. And I'll give an example. I have designed a game called Nighthawks, which is a space tactics combat game. You saw the prototype in the last episode. Uh, in Nighthawks, you roll a die to see if you hit a ship. And if you hit a ship, obviously you damage that ship. However, there were some games when we were playtesting where someone would get on a string of bad luck and they were missing with all of their shots. And not only did it extend the sort of length of the game, which was something that I didn't want, but it also felt really bad if you're the player who just, by no fault of your own, is just rolling poorly. So what I did was I added a mechanic called energy. And in Nighthawks, if you miss a shot, you gain a point of energy as your ship is still building up its energy. Maybe it didn't get an exact hit, but it's still charging up its weapons or charging up its systems. And then later on, you can spend that energy in order to get an automatic hit if you like. Your sensors are fully, charged, and you can get an automatic hit. So it mitigates that a little bit. So even though, you prefer just to hit whenever you roll a dice, if you roll poorly, you're not completely out of the game. And it also allows endgame to go a little bit quicker as well. Uh, but during the game is not the only time when you're going to have randomness. A lot of games use randomness in setup. Do you have an example of a game that does that, Matt?
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite games. A lot of people are not going to like this, but I am a huge Twilight Imperium fan, and one of my favorite parts of that game is setting up the board at the very beginning of the game, and that is all random. We each give each other random characters, random races, and then when you build your solar system, it's all random and it's awesome and it's great. Another example would be like Risk, where you don't know where you're going to start, your countries are going to start, or what countries you're going to own at the beginning. There's a lot of games with a lot of really cool random setup mechanics.
Yeah, and I think along the same lines as Risk, I think an even more, I guess, impressive example is something like Diplomacy, where Diplomacy is a game that has absolutely zero randomness unless you have someone who's playing a wild card. But you have mostly zero randomness during the mechanical portion of the game as it's taking place. However, at the beginning of the game, the countries are randomly distributed amongst the players. So you can play diplomacy with the same six friends over and over again, as long as you guys remain friends. You can play
Yeah.
with them over and over again, and each time will be a little bit different. Pandemic is another great example where Pandemic has a lot of randomness in there because it's a cooperative game. The game is kind of playing against you, and Pandemic does a great job at randomizing the beginning of the game, so you're never quite getting the same experience from session to session. There are some games that also, while the setup isn't random, the end is random, and a lot of miniatures games do this. I know that Warhammer does this.
Hmm.
Malifaux, which is my favorite miniatures game, does this, where the game will automatically go 5 turns. However, there's a chance at a sixth turn and a chance at a seventh turn. And I think it's really cool that that element is in there because it adds a little bit of uncertainty. Something that is sort of a human trait, and a lot of people like to have this trait sort of acknowledged when they're playing their games, is the fact that people like surprises, people like discovery, and randomness in a game can give you a chance to provide that for your players. It sort of hits their brain from that angle. Now, again, there's going to be certain players who love the fact that chess is completely open information and you can sort of predict what's going to happen. And there's an appeal to those types of games. But randomness doesn't always have to be a bad thing. And that's what we're trying to say today is that it does serve a purpose in your design. It can make games more replayable. It can provide discovery and surprises for your players, and it can provide a way for your less skilled players to compete, hypothetically, with the more skilled players. But you want to make sure you're doing so in a way that doesn't completely discount all the choices that those more skilled players are making.
Right. You still want to have a lot of choice in your games, which I think that gives the players an actual game to play instead of just rolling dice.
Right. And so, there's a difference between board games that are designed to be played by players and uh, games of chance, games like craps or blackjack or something like that, where there's a little bit of skill, but what it really comes down to is, being lucky, basically. And it's a tough thing to balance, and not every game is going to be the same in that regard. A lot of abstract games pride themselves on being a little bit less random, whereas larger games, the big box games, your cooperative games, your quote unquote Ameritrash games, are going to be a lot more random, and that's kind of their hallmark. So you want to also play to the player's expectations as well, and random pools of dice are not going to be perfect in every game, but don't shy away from them just because they're dice, right?
Gotta love dice.
Yeah, a lot of people love dice.
Yeah.
In the future, we're going to talk about more episodes. We're going to talk about dice, cards, other types of randomness. We're going to go a little bit more in depth with that. So, of course, feel free to subscribe. You can go down below, click on that button right there. Subscribe to Board Game Design Time, where we talk about game design for fun, nothing else. You can also comment on this. Let us know what you think about randomness. Let us know if there's games that you hate their random elements or you love their random elements. Because we really want to make this show about you guys. We're trying to empower people, give them the confidence that they need to take what's in their head and put it out into the real world, and do so with purpose, not just randomness. Is that a good end to the show?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay, excellent. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye bye.